In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the brake master cylinder on this Toyota Tacoma. Let's install this TRQ master cylinder. Remove the cap off the master cylinder reservoir, and then you'll see that there's a little screen in here. Might have to remove some of the fluid to get it out. I'm going to have to remove the fluid anyway and get new fluid in there. So I'm going to start by using a little vacuum pump or a fluid extractor pump. Just get as much out as I can from the little filter area so I can stick my hand in there and pull this straight out. A lot of times this is going to be a little difficult to remove. If you're having a hard time, grab some needle nose pliers, pinch it, and remove it. Let all that fluid drain so you don't get it everywhere. Set this aside. Now remove the rest of the fluid. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect, just do your best. Remove as much as you can. That's it. That's all there is. Let's unplug the level sensor now. Press on the tab. Move the connector off. Sometimes these get stuck because they stay in here for a long time. If yours is really stuck, you can very gently grab it with pliers. There we go. Just careful not to break it or cut any of the wires. Set this aside. Now you want to use a 10mm flare nut wrench. It grabs onto a couple extra sides, so I recommend it for breaking these fittings free. And remove both of these lines, the front and the rear line. Doesn't matter which one you start with. Once it's broken free, you can even use a regular wrench, which I will because it's a lot easier to maneuver around here. There we go. I have an absorbent pad underneath so that it can catch any fluid that drips. No matter how much you drain this reservoir, there will still be some that leaks out. Just keep that in mind. You want to avoid getting this brake fluid on the paint of the vehicle because it will damage it. So if it does get on, wash it off as soon as you can. There's one line. There's the second line. Take a 12mm socket. You can do this with a wrench too through here, but you don't have a lot of swing. And you may or may not need a swivel. Stick it on the mounting nut of the master cylinder, break it free. Remove the mounting nut. Oh, try not to lose it down there. There we go. And do the other one on the other side. On the brake booster vacuum line side, this bracket needs to come off. Set that aside. And on this side, there's a bracket for the wire here. Set that aside. Now you can grab the master cylinder, wiggle it, pull it straight out. There will be another bracket here which holds the brake lines in place, but you can push it out of the way like this and lift this straight up and wiggle it out. There we go. There's your master cylinder. When you install your new master cylinder, make sure you remove this protective sleeve off of the shaft that goes into the brake booster. You do not want to leave this on. The seal that holds vacuum is going to go on this. If you leave this on, it's actually going to damage the seal if it even goes in at all. So this is just for shipping purposes. Before I slide it in, I'm going to give this a little cleaning to make sure that there is no debris in here. If you want to install a new gasket here, go ahead and replace it. I'm going to reuse mine. Clean that off and make sure that everything else in there looks good. There is supposed to be a little bit of grease on there, so if you see that, don't completely wipe it away, just leave it. Now, pull this bracket away, install the master cylinder. Make sure it gets lined up properly in there so it doesn't break any seals or anything and actually seats in evenly. If it sits at an angle or doesn't want to go in, don't force it, take it back out, see what's happening, and then try again. Otherwise, you can cause some damage. Put this bracket over, just like so. And before you put the mounting nuts on, remember that on the right side of the booster, as you're looking at it, you had this bracket that held on to this little pin at the top for the vacuum line, but then on the other side, you had a bracket that held on a wire. Like that. And now you can put the mounting nuts on. Start on the mounting nuts. There we go. Don't worry about tightening them just yet. Just start both of them. Make sure this bracket stays on here. Tighten these up, or snug them first, and then the torque for them is 9 foot-pounds, so don't make them too tight when you snug them. That way we can properly torque them. There we go. I'm going to stop there and do the other one. Once again, 9 foot-pounds is the torque for both of these. That's it right there. It's really not very tight, so if you're doing this by hand, or if you don't have a torque wrench that'll torque these, just make them nice and snug. Between 1/8 and 1/4 turn after they bottom out is the ideal tightness. Now at this point, you would have already noticed that I didn't bench bleed it on a bench in a vise. You can do that, but what I like to do is bleed it on the vehicle because it's a lot easier. All you have to do is use the brake pedal and pump. You also have to make some brake lines. So I'm going to pull off these yellow caps on both of the lines. I'm also going to remove the filter out of this, just like so. Set that aside in a clean area. And now I have these 2 lines that I'm going to thread into their fitting here. What this is going to do is the line will push the fluid out and through the port here, put it back into the master cylinder, but it's also going to take the air with it, put it here, but air rises. So as soon as we push the brake pedal all the way down and air comes through the line, it's going to rise up to the top. When you release that brake pedal, it's going to pull fluid from the master cylinder back into the line. And you're going to want to repeat that cycle several times until you see no more air coming out of these lines. The fluid level should drop just a little bit as fluid replaces the air on the lines. And now that I have both of these threaded in, I'm going to take a wrench and snug them up. Obviously, I don't want fluid leaking all over here. You don't have to tighten them a lot, just a little bit of a snug fit is good. Okay, that's good right there. This feels good as well. So now let's put fresh brake fluid in here, top it off. I'm just going to go up to the max line, which you can see on either sides. When you fill this, you definitely want to make sure you use the correct fluid, and that is .3 brake fluid in this case. It even says it on the cap right here. Slowly pump up the brake pedal, push it all the way, push it all the way to the floor. This one was a little stiff at first. And then hold it there for a second, pull it back up very slowly. That'll pull in the new brake fluid. Just keep repeating the process. The trick here is to just go slow. I'm going to reinstall this absorbent mat now that we're done bleeding it, because as soon as we disconnect the lines, it's going to start pouring fluid out. So however you put this in here, if you have something to catch all the fluid, make sure that it's obviously not in your way so that you can swap out lines quickly, but also make it catch as much of the fluid as possible so you don't get it all over everywhere underneath. That's the key. Now let's loosen up this line. Obviously, as soon as you loosen it, it's going to start dripping fluid. So at this point, we're going to be quick. I'm going to plug this hole with my finger, get that line out, and then have your actual brake line ready. Slide it on here and get that fitting started. Starting these fittings can be a little challenging because if they're not lined up perfectly, it will not start. However, it looks like I got mine started, so I'm going to continue threading it in. It's going to keep leaking until the fitting is tight. Okay, that's bottomed out. So I'm going to grab this with my wrench, Just give it about a quarter turn at most. That's going to be plenty tight for this fitting. Now we have to repeat the procedure for the rear one. The reason I did this one first is so that the bleeder line isn't in my way when I turn my wrench. So, same procedure applies on this one. Break this one free, remove it, and start in your other line. You just have to start the fitting. Definitely want to make sure that these do not cross thread. Otherwise you'll have to replace both the master cylinder and the fitting. That's it. That's started. Tighten it up. Snug it up, same as the front one. And there we have it. With my absorbent pad there, I'm going to use some brake parts cleaner and clean all this off. I want to get all the old brake fluid out, just in case I have a leak. I want to make sure I see it and not confuse it for residual brake fluid. Get this out of here. Put this little filter back in if you haven't already. Slide it down and turn it clockwise. It'll kind of lock into place here. Let's put the cap on. And of course, don't forget to plug in the level sensor on the side here. Now you would do a full manual brake bleed to make sure there is no air left in the system. The sequence is starting at the right rear wheel, the passenger side rear, that is the furthest point from the master cylinder, the longest line. Then you go to the left rear, then you move over to the right front, passenger side front, and then driver side front, which is the left front. Now I have an assistant in the vehicle ready to pump up the brake pedal. They're going to pump it up, create pressure, and then hold pressure on that brake pedal. While they hold pressure, you want to crack the bleeder screw open. This takes a 10mm wrench. To get that done, we're going to have to, of course, pop off this little cap. So remove that. I also have a little reservoir with a hose that can slide over here so that no brake fluid goes all over the place. It's just going to go through the hose into my little collection receptacle. If you don't have this, just make sure you don't dump it on the ground. Have a collection receptacle to catch it. At this point, let's go ahead and pump up the brakes, please. All right, they're holding pressure, so I'm going to crack this open. You'll see fluid come in and through this hose here. If I can hold it. There we go. And once the pedal has reached the floor, close it up and let's pump again. All right. Open it back up. There we go. We're getting a lot of air here, so we're going to keep repeating this process until there's no more air coming out of the bleeder screw. Perfect. You can release the brake pedal now. I had several passes of clean fluid, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to remove my reservoir, clean up any debris and residual fluid that is here, cap it off, and then you want to move to the driver's side rear. That's the left rear wheel cylinder, that is, so we can bleed there. On to the next side, you want to top off your master cylinder in between calipers or wheel cylinders, of course, so that you can have plenty of brake fluid to work with. You don't want to run that master cylinder dry. Pop off that cap. I'm going to put my little hose on here, just like that, and have my wrench ready. Go ahead and pump up the brakes and then hold pressure. All right, lots of air in this one. Go ahead and pump again. All right, it's looking better. Pump again. All right, let's do it one more time. That looks really good, nice and clean. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I'm going to remove my hose. Of course, clean up any residual here. Cap it off. Now onto the passenger side front wheel, of course. Once again, top off that master cylinder. And then you're going to want to remove this little cap. Sometimes they need some help because they're stuck. Try not to break it. If this breaks, try to source a new one. What this does is it prevents the bleeder from getting clogged up inside. Now, same thing. I'm going to put my Put my wrench on, put my little hose on here, and let's go ahead and pump up the brakes. All right, holding pressure, so I'm going to open this up. All right, let's do it again. And a couple more times, go again. Okay, let's do it one more time. This is nice and clean. Perfect. I had several passes of clean fluid. You can go ahead and release the brake pedal now. I'm going to take all of this off, clean up anything that is necessary to clean up. Of course, put that cap back on so the bleeder doesn't get clogged up. Let's move on to the last wheel, which is the driver's side front wheel. Onto the last wheel. Take this boot off and put my tools on here. Go ahead and pump up the brakes now. All right, crack this open. Yeah, we got some air. Go ahead and pump again. All right, go ahead and pump again. Perfect. Let's do it one last time just to be safe. That is nice and clean. You can let go of the brake pedal now. Clean all this up. Take my wrench off, clean off any residual, cap it off, and then you can put the wheel on, but of course top off your master cylinder one last time. Remove the cap off the master cylinder reservoir. Top off the master cylinder, make sure it's up to the max line, which you can see right here on the side. Once it's topped off, put the cap back on.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.